With the start and rise of the new Beyblade X series, we've suddenly got a bunch of people checking back in the hobby, or just new people in general that need help with Beyblade related things. Well, worry no more, because in today's video, I'm going over 10 tips that every blader should know. But before we start, please subscribe because it really helps us out, and yeah, let's just get started. Tip number 1. Picking the right Beyblade launcher. Now, you can have the best Beyblade in the world, but if you have a terrible launcher, it's not going to be winning any battles. Currently, there are only 3 types of launchers in the current Beyblade X generation: the Proto Launcher, the Winder Launcher, and the String Launcher. Now, the Proto Launcher is the basic launcher that comes with most standard Hasbro Beyblades, and this one is definitely the worst option. It's hard to hold, it doesn't have much control, and it just doesn't make the Beyblade spin that fast. So really, it's a choice between the Winder and the String Launcher. The main difference between these two is the control. To simplify it, the Winder Launcher has gear multiplication inside. It has multiple gears that interlock, making it more powerful than any ripcord launcher we've gotten before in the plastic, metal, or even the burst series. This makes the Winder Launcher one of the strongest launchers out there. However, it is a bit hard to control at times, especially with a stamina or defense combo. So if you want a more controlled launch with slightly less power, I would recommend the String Launcher, which can be bought from this Phoenix starter pack, and it's honestly like a great deal. You get a super strong Beyblade in Phoenix and an amazing launcher. But if you have like strong and shaky hands and love to just go all out, maybe the Ripcord Launcher is for you. Now, if you're a Beyblade Burst fan, you have a lot more launchers in selection, considering it was the longest running Beyblade series. You have the basic Ripcord and String Launchers, which used to be good, but now they're heavily outclassed when using bays past the Chosy series. The Sword Launcher, although it was fun, wasn't really too special. The Eller Launcher at the time during the Evolution series was definitely the strongest launcher out there, however it got outclassed with time by the absolute best launcher by far, the DB String Launcher. Guys, this thing is insane. It is dual rotation, it is by far the strongest launcher objectively, and finally, it is customizable. And yeah, they also made a DB Sword Launcher too, but that one isn't really as good. Just stick with the String Launcher. Anyway, although a strong launch is important, just remember, as long as you're having fun, that's really all that matters. Alright, let's move on to the next fact. Wait, not fact, tip. Oh my goodness. Tip number 2. Tips, but the kind on the bottom of the Beyblade, or bits or drivers or whatever they call it now. They change it every single gen for some reason, but it's essentially the part of the Beyblade that makes contact with the stadium. They're debatably the most important part of your Beyblade combo, so I thought it'd be great to go over the different types to help you guys make the best combos possible. Let's start off with rubber tips. Rubber tips have a lot of friction with the stadium floor. This means they are hard to hit out of the stadium, but they have very little stamina. The friction also causes the Beyblade to move at super fast speeds, making these flat rubber tips great for aggressive attack combos. Rounded rubber tips are also used for defensive combos to avoid being knocked out. Next, we have the most basic and plentiful kind of tip material: plastic. Plastic has less friction, so although it's easy to hit around, it provides the Beyblade with much more stamina. So because of this, it's used on some of the best drivers to appear, such as Destroy, and one of the best drivers I think ever released in all of Beyblade, Bearing Drift, which uses palm plastic to have even less friction. Now let's talk about metal tips. Metal has the least amount of friction, which theoretically would give the Beyblade the most amount of stamina. However, it also makes it heavier. For example, in MFB, metal tips were extremely competitive, with parts like Metal Flat and Metal Ball frequenting the scene. Although metal tips didn't reach the same level in Burst as they did in Metal Fight, we still have some parts that were okay at best, like the iron and the wedge, but worst of all, low. So yeah, anyway, Burst didn't really have that great of metal tips, but hopefully X has a better start, and it seems like we are getting our first metal bit with Metal Needle. Oh, honestly, it doesn't look so great for X either. Anyway, each tip material has its own benefits and weaknesses, so use the material that you think is best for the combo that you're making. Tip number 3. Weight distribution. Although for the most part, it is true that the heavier the Beyblade is, the better it is. What really matters is where the weight is put on the bay. If the weight is focused on one point of the Beyblade, then it causes the Bey to be unbalanced, leading to less stamina, but this unbalancedness can lead to crazy hard hits. Take Excalibur from Burst for example, or even Knight's Shield, which is mostly used for its attacking capabilities due to its unbalanced weight distribution. Now that's for attack, but let's talk about the optimal weight distribution for a stamina Beyblade. For a perfect stamina Beyblade, you want to put your weight towards the outside of your Bey for more rotational inertia. This outer weight carries momentum, allowing your Beyblade to spin as long as possible. But if you're looking for a more defensive Beyblade, put your weight towards the center of the Bey. That increases its defensive capabilities, making it harder to knock out of the stadium. Tip number 4. The gears on bits. Currently there are 3 gear counts on bits from Beyblade X. We have 8 gears, 12 gears, and 16 gears. 12 is the normal amount of gears seen on most bits. It's the standard one and doesn't really have any benefits or drawbacks. 8 gears has slightly less and causes the Beyblade to catch the extreme line easier and loses less stamina from extreme attacks. However, the extreme attacks won't be as powerful. This can be seen on the rush bit. And finally we have 16 gears, which is slightly more than average and makes it easier to catch the extreme line, but this time it causes the Beyblade to have a super strong X attack at the cost of stamina. This can be seen on the Excel and the Hex bit. Just like the other tips that we mentioned in this video, which bit you choose and the amount of gears on them really comes down to what you prioritize in your combo. Do you want to have a hard-hitting combo with the downside of stamina, or a weaker combo but better stamina, or do you just want a well-rounded Beyblade? Oh yeah, also there are gear bits where the gears go all the way down the bottom of the bit. These ones are kind of mid to be honest, and the original versions are usually better. Tip number 5. Launching strength. Now most people think that a strong launch is always the best, but sometimes it's actually better to weak launch your Beyblade. Now there are a couple of reasons to do this. Reason number 1 is it causes less impacts. If you're a stamina Beyblade and you know you have a lot more stamina than your opponent, you're not going to want to risk being knocked out, so you'll launch your Beyblade slightly weaker to avoid these crazy impacts. Reason number 2, burst resistance. Because their collisions will be a lot less crazy, there'll be a lot less opportunity for your opponent to hit your ratchet and burst you. And finally, while this doesn't apply to X yet, weak launching is a key strategy in spin stealing. You avoid getting knocked out and then just casually steal your opponent's spin the whole battle. If you're using this technique with a stamina Beyblade, then make sure you have better LAD than your opponent. And if you're asking what LAD is, we'll talk about that later in a future tip, so stay tuned. Tip number 6, strengthening ripcords. Ripcords can come bent out of the box or get bent while using them, but there is a way to strengthen any bent ripcord. All you have to do is use warm or hot water to loosen the plastic enough to bend it back to straight, then place them in ice water to harden the plastic back. That's all there is to it, and this way you can easily launch your Beyblade with less friction than before, allowing you to get stronger, more precise launches. Tip number 7. For the love of the Lord, please do not twist your Beyblades on the launcher. It hurts the gears. Don't do this. It will break your launchers and wear it down, and also it hurts every blader's ears. Just twist it until there's a little bit of resistance and just don't keep going. Don't worry, your Beyblade is secured on the launcher and will not fall off. Tip number 8. Part wear. Over time, as you use a Beyblade, the parts wear down. Mainly this happens on rubber parts like the Extreme Driver, where it gets overused and the rubber gets worn down, making the Beyblade less aggressive over time. This also happens to plastic tips, where sharp or ball-shaped plastic tips flatten down and become more aggressive. But more significantly, this happens the most in X, due to the extremely crazy strong hits causing more damage for the Beys. Drain Buster, for example, has one giant contact point that gets more dull the more you use it, making its attacks less effective. In some cases, however, some parts actually get better the more you wear them down. Take the Volcanic Driver from Burst, for example. When you first get a Volcanic Driver, it is super aggressive and hard to control. But the more you wear down the plastic inside the driver, the more free spinning it gets, and the better it is at stamina and spin steal. There are even cases where the Beyblades are designed to wear down and awaken, such as Savior Valkyrie and the Variable Driver. These awakenings are super cool in the anime and in real life. Alright, next tip. Tip number 9. creating competitive combos. For all the bladers out there with competitive spirits or blader spirits in them, here's a short non-specific guide to what you want in a Beyblade for tournaments. We'll only be covering the X series. For attack tips, you want a heavy and aggressive blade like Phoenix Wing with high speed bits like Flat or Excel, sometimes even Taper or Rush. For defense, you want the blade to be able to absorb attacks or have them basically bounce off with a bit that can stop it from getting knocked out, something like the Hex bit. For stamina, you want a really round blade with a lot of weight distribution towards the outside, like Wizard Rod. And for the bit, you want to have less friction with the stadium floor, but good LAD. And don't worry, we will get there soon. For the most part, you want your combo to be as heavy as possible with the correct weight distribution, which we talked about in an earlier tip. You also want to have good burst resistance, so if it's possible, try to get a bit with a band on it. To have a better understanding or to get more in-depth knowledge on competitive combos, I suggest watching some tournament vlogs or checking out winning combos from WBO posts. Alright, now finally on to our last tip. Tip number 10, the tip everyone's been waiting for, LAD. We're finally here, so LAD stands for Life After Death. Basically, it's a Beyblade's ability to keep spinning even when it's out of juice. For example, a flat tip when it's out of spin falls over and immediately just dies. It has bad life after death. However, a ball-shaped tip falls over and then glides for a bit longer. It lives a little after falling over, meaning it has good life after death. Most attack bits and drivers have bad LAD due to the needed friction. However, there are exceptions like Destroy and Hold. LAD is most useful in opposite spin matchups as it can help you last even slightly longer than your opponent or help with spin stealing. If you soft launch against an aggressive opponent but you have better LAD, you can outspin them, even if they were launched even stronger than your Bey was. So that was 10 Beyblade tips that everyone should know, but I got a little secret for you guys. Come here, come a little closer. The best Beyblade tip ever is to have money.